Hello and hey, to mess around with Baldur's Gate 3. So you want to be a Warlock. Power at any cost. Bold strategy. Let's dive in. Warlocks are defined by their pact with an otherworldly being, beholden to them for their power they've bestowed. However, in Baldur's Gate 3, this relationship's importance is lessened significantly. So while definitely notable, the choice of patron is less emphasized than it would be in tabletop D&D. Starting right at first level, you choose said patron from the Fiend, Archfey, or Great Old One. And at this level, the Fiend grants, when you reduce a creature's hit points to 0, gain temporary hit points equal to Warlock level plus Charisma modifier. The Archfey grants the ability to charm or frighten foes within a 10-foot, 3-meter radius centered on you if they fail a Wisdom save. And the Great Old One gives you, when you land a critical hit, that creature and any nearby creatures have to make a Wisdom save or be frightened till the end of their next turn. They're all interesting options, so don't let my earlier note about the choice of patron being less important fool you. It's less important for roleplay purposes. It will still impact your mechanical play. Staying at first level, the base class gives us a single first level spell slot, which showcases the strange, unique nature of Warlock spellcasting. Our spell slots are always the highest level we can cast and come back on short rest, so while you won't be casting more than a handful of leveled spells a day, you'll have more casts of the higher level spells than any other class, provided you are getting your short rest. At level 2, we get a second first level slot, a big boon, though be warned we won't be getting a third for a long while, but for now, very impactful. Also at level 2, we get 2 Eldritch Invocations, which allow you to gain new abilities or modify current ones. The list of 10 at this level include Agonizing Blast, which allows us to add our Charisma modifier to the damage roll of our Eldritch Blasts, that's per beam as it levels up by the way. Armor of Shadow, which allows us to cast Mage Armor without expending a spell slot. Beast Speech, which allows us to cast Speak with Animals without expending a spell slot. Beguiling Influence gives us proficiency in Deception and Persuasion. Devil's Sight grants us Magical Dark Vision out to 24 meters. Fiendish Vigor allows us to cast False Life without expending a spell slot. Mask of Many Faces, Disguise Self without a spell slot. One with Shadows, a skill that as an action lets you go invisible, but breaks if basically literally anything happens. Repelling Blasts makes our Eldritch Blast knock back 4.5 meters. Feast of Five Fates allows you to cast Bane with a Warlock spell slot. These invocations help you balance out the restricted nature of your spellcasting, letting you expand your repertoire or specialize in the aspects you like most. As we level up to 3, our spell slots become second level, and we get to choose the nature of our pact, selecting from Pact of the Chain, Pact of the Blade, and Pact of the Tome. It's another way to lock in just how you'd like to play. Pact of the Chain gives you a special Find Familiar spell that allows you to choose from the options of a Quasit or Imp, much better combat forms than the basic spell. Pact of the Blade allows you to bind a melee weapon and use Charisma for its attack and damage rolls, or Pact of the Tome, which grants the cantrips Guidance, Vicious Mockery, and Thorn Whip. These pacts will deepen and improve at 5th level, so if you're unsure on which you'd like to choose, it could be helpful to look ahead, and I'll be talking about it very shortly. Like all other classes, 4th level gives us our first ability score increase. The vast majority of characters will use it to get an 18 Charisma, though looking for armor proficiency, spellcast, or even something like Great Weapon Master if you went Pact of the Blade are all viable. Just go nuts. At 5th level, our 2 spell slots become 3rd level, our pact deepens, and we get a 3rd Eldritch Invocation. Because I dangled it with the 3rd level talk, we'll share the pact improvements first. Pact of the Chain's Familiar gets an extra attack, but worth noting that it is not improved in any other way, and may be bugged right now to not always give the extra attack. Yikes. The Pact of the Blade gives the extra attack feature, and is also bugged, but this time in a positive way, because despite explicitly saying it does not stack with other extra attack features, this is a lie. It will stack. The only time it works as intended is if you start a combat with an attack, you will only receive 1 extra one for that turn, but every subsequent turn or even an action surge that same turn will yield 3 attacks from the attack action. And lastly, Pact of the Tome, which grants usage of Animate Dead, Haste, and Call Lightning once per day, giving you more options, great options, as a spellcaster without having to use your precious spell slots. As far as I'm aware, it's not bugged. Still at 5th level, you get the choice of any of the 8 Eldritch Invocations you did not pick at 2nd level, and 2 new ones. They are Mire the Mind, which allows you to cast Slow with a Warlock spell slot, and Sign of Ill Omen, which allows you to cast Bestow Curse with a Warlock spell slot. So, with no more pact improvements and still not halfway to our 3rd spell slot, a lot of players will opt to multiclass out after level 5, which we'll talk about later, but I wanted to make a note, especially with the bugged extra attack right now. 5 levels of Warlock is a particularly large spike of power. At level 6, we get another feature from our patron. The Fiend grants a D10 to an ability check once per short rest. The Archfey allows you to use your reaction to become invisible after taking damage. Doing so will allow you to cast Misty Step on your next turn. And the Great Old One gives you the ability to, as a reaction, impose disadvantage on an attack roll against you. If that misses, you get advantage on that attacker for a turn. There's definitely varying levels of power there, maybe enough to sway you from what you liked at level 1. Just remember, especially if you are single classing all the way, there is one more patron feature at level 10. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Level 7 makes our spell slots jump up to 4th level, and we get another Eldritch Invocation. Still get to choose from any of the previously unchosen options, plus 3 more. They include Book of Ancient Secrets, which is Ray of Sickness, Chromatic Orb, and Silence. Can cast each once per long rest without expending any spell slots. Dreadful Word, which allows you to cast Confusion with a Warlock spell slot. And Sculptor of Flesh, which allows you to cast Polymorph with a Warlock spell slot. 8th level is the second ASI. Boosting Charisma is likely what you'll do, or grabbing one of the feats I mentioned earlier. At level 9, spell slots go to 5th level, and we get yet another Eldritch Invocation, any of the previous, plus Minions of Chaos, which allows you to conjure Elemental with a Warlock spell slot. Otherworldly Leap, which grants you the ability to cast Enhance Leap. Whispers of the Grave, which allows you to cast Speak with Dead without expending a spell slot. At level 10, we get the last of our patron features. The Fiend allows you to become resistant to any type of damage, and that's changeable on short rest. The Archfey makes you immune to being charmed, and the Great Old One gives you resistance to psychic damage, making any creature that damages you with that type take the same amount of damage themselves. Level 11 does not boost our spell slot level, but we finally get a third, and we get Mystic Arcanum, which lets us cast one 6th level spell for setting on long rest. The choices of 6th level spell are Circle of Death, Arcane Gate, Eye Bite, Flesh to Stone, and Create Undead. Then our capstone level for Baldur's Gate 3, level 12. The last of our 3 ASIs, getting our Charisma to 20 if you haven't, grabbing whichever feat you fancy, or maybe becoming one of the rare classes that boosts a non-primary attribute. Look at you. But that's not all we get either. Another Eldritch Invocation, any of the ones we had not chosen previously, or now Life Drinker, which adds our Charisma modifier to our melee attacks, just in case any of you Pact of the Blade enjoyers didn't multi-class out. That wraps up everything you get if you were to stay mono-classed, but like I mentioned earlier, I would like to take a look at some of the many options Warlocks have for broadening their horizons. When it comes to multiclassing, it's never only about what you're getting, but also what you're giving up. It's important to keep that in mind when making decisions to do so. Because of its unique spellcasting, you won't lose out on the spell slots, but rather the level of your spells. Depending on which spells you favor, this might not really be a downside, but anyways, it's something to be aware of. Warlock multiclassing is split between melee destruction and spellcasting, much like its class itself. Duct taping the Warlock to any martial class, especially with the current extra attack bug, will yield positive results. And even after it's fixed, if it's fixed, Pact of the Blade at Warlock 3 still lends itself to a dip for the martial classes that want to leverage being able to only look to a single stat and be the party's face. When I say any martial class, I'm not joking either. Barbarian, Combat Bard, Fighter, Monk, Paladin, Ranger, and even Rogue are viable choices, though I will narrow that list down to saying Paladin, Fighter, and Barbarian are the best choices for the melee-focused Warlocks among us. I don't know if I even need to sing the praises of Paladin, the Omni class that greatly benefits from Charisma already, or if I can just put the word Smite in all capital letters on screen to convey my point. The deeper into Paladin you go, the more you gain, picking up auras at the 6th and 7th levels of the class. Or you can stop at Warlock 5, Paladin 5, and think about 2 levels from either of the other 2 classes I mentioned, Fighter or Barbarian. Fighter would give you Action Surge, a fighting style and second wind, while Barbarian gives Rage and Reckless Attack, which in Baldur's Gate 3 does not care if you're using Charisma as your attacking stat, it still works. If you'd prefer to go Vengeance Paladin and Enmity your way to advantage on the biggest bad in the room, the Action Surge route may be the way to go. Or if you don't want to play Paladin, or just want to deal with the Oath mechanics, 5 levels of Battle Master can accomplish a lot with the right maneuvers, though without at least Paladin 2, your damage will decidedly not be what it could be with critted 3rd level Smite. Before I move to the spellcasters, I want to give a special shout out to Shadow Monk, because monk weapons are just any weapon you are proficient with in BG3, and binding a pack weapon makes you proficient. This seems like it could open up something crazy, but do think that would still fall short of the previously mentioned combinations. Though as far as a sneaky whirlwind of attacks goes, this is way up there and just cool. I like mentioning cool. For the spellcasters, a couple stand above the rest, but mostly all the spellcasters have something interesting to add, and any additional spell slots are nice. I think the best option is Sorcerer, which is not a surprising revelation. Sorlock is well documented, but I do have to say, I found not having perfect control of my spell slots for casting and converting to sorcery points a bit frustrating and clunky, so on top of it being more a Sorcerer dipping into Warlock than the other way around, it doesn't quite work as well in BG3 specifically. It's not to say it's not good, just that it wasn't the same peak as its tabletop counterpart. Though with a 1 level dip into Wizard, you can get any spell you want provided you have the scroll. opening up any caster multiclass your heart desires. So don't put too much stock in my slight bias against a predominantly Warlock spellcasting multiclass. That's just me. But that begs the question, how would I level a Warlock? And I say, why, thank you for asking. Pretty simple. I'd go 10 strength, 14 dex, 16 con, 8 int, 10 wisdom, and 16 charisma. Go the first 5 levels straight into Warlock, any invocations and patron that you like. Go Pact of the Blade, 18 charisma for the first ASI. Then at level 6, depending on how many respecs you're open to doing, Fighter 1 would technically be the play, just to get the most out of the level. But at level 7, you either respec to Warlock 5, Paladin 2, or Warlock 5, Barbarian 2, or we would further change our ASI to Great Weapon Master. Just for Barbarian, we would make that change, to be clear. Can do some more rearranging as we level, but the goal is to get to Warlock 5, Paladin 5, Barbarian 2, with 18 Charisma and Great Weapon Master as our ASIs. Along the way, you could switch out for any of the others, and like I mentioned, if you wanted to go the Oath of Vengeance route for Vow of Enmity, nothing wrong with taking Fighter 2 instead of Barb. A 7 attack first turn is devastating. I just like the consistency and crit fishing of Reckless Attack that Bard gives, especially if the fight is going to go past 3 rounds with multiple big bads in the field, which isn't uncommon in Baldur's Gate. And now that we're in full release for one of these guides, I get to show the build off, but the build is as straightforward as they come and can be summed up in a flowchart of, are you attacking? If yes, good. If not, well, you better be getting up on it. If it was more complicated than that, I promise I'd show it, though this character is a face that has one job in combat: seek and destroy. I think we're still a bit too early to muster up specific items for a build, plus it's hard to say exactly how hard to focus on things like that. People have been suggesting things for finished characters, and while you do get to play a decent chunk of the game at or above 10th level, those become less practical, almost. Like, if you make a build focused around an item you get near the end of the last act, it's awesome to have, and leveraging its strengths is encouraged and a fun exercise. But again, with how much time would lead up to that, don't want to push too hard on that with the game being about a week old. So I'll leave it with that. And that'll just about do it for me. Hope to catch you in the next one, as always. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Be safe, guys.